Hey, you're with the Cage Rage Podcast. I'm Chadillac, and we're talking about the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and we are talking about the judgments currently handed down for John Jones and his hot urinalysis / clean urinalysis, and the McGregor and Khabib decisions that have finally been handed down this week. And Miguel's going to take it away from there and tell us what's going on. Miguel, where do you want to start on this? This is a mess.
Yeah, I think the commission really experts at not looking good. They manage it always to a T to like almost improve on like performances. You know what I mean? And
right.
And here I don't think they look good. Again, here's a situation where I think the sport calls for an authority here, somebody to step in and say this is the way things are going to be, and that's it. And they themselves could do that just in Nevada and stuff, and is open, but they could be very powerful, and they like to take these like I don't know, they're half steps or what you call it, but they go through these bureaucratic procedures to get nothing done. So here's how they did nothing. Right, the October 6th fight is what we're talking about, which is Khabib and McGregor won. The altercation afterwards saw everybody suspended, and the commission met after that, and they said, we're putting off our decision till later, so everybody was still suspended. And 4 months have gone by, basically, since the fight. And at the end of January here, just at the tail end of the third month, heading into the fourth month, the commission steps in and says, all right, things are decided. McGregor, $50,000 fine, 6 months suspension. McGregor probably should have been suspended for 6 months for the ass kicking he took. And $50,000 is tip money for the kid now. So, McGregor actually on the internet thanking them for going through the process.
McGregor literally got on the internet. And, what did he do? Did he tweet? Did he tweet a thank you letter to him? What did he do?
Yeah, it was something along those lines where he said, thank you very much to the commission for
He's a brash motherfucker. Like that. That's great. So anyways, go ahead.
One of the things that we're going to talk about. And Khabib, Dana White's on the record saying Khabib, they treated him harshly. And they gave him a 9-month sentence, a suspension, and he's got a choice where he can do a video with like Nevada police and stuff like that, and he cuts it down to 6 months. So he'll probably be on a 6-month suspension. And what they did is they fined him $500K. Now that's a lot of money.
That's pretty
harsh. The Nevada Commission is going to take that, and I'm going to tell you one thing the Nevada Commission is not going to do with that money, even though it should be this way. I mean, why not, right? McGregor, $50K, okay, whatever. But $500,000 is a windfall. That's a lot of money. They probably have had a few years since they've had a fine issued of that nature. If they deal with a couple or whatever, it still is a good chunk of money where the difference between, we had 3 fines of that or 1 fine of that makes a huge difference in a budget. But they don't do it that way. They take that money and it goes away because, with $500,000, they could pay for every fighter's drug test for the next year.
Easily.
Why not? You know what I mean? It's like, why doesn't it go into a fund that helps the sport be a sport? They have trouble with drug testing. Well, here's a solution to it. There's money coming in. Put it to good use. Instead, it'll probably go to fund the state police's Christmas party.
So you've got bureaucracy. You've got bureaucracy rearing its ugly head again. Is there any accountability for the dollars and cents that go through the Nevada Athletic Commission? Who keeps track of that?
For sure, right now, I do know. I don't know because with the trend of commissions being privately owned kind of thing and setting up business like that with weird relationships, who knows where things stand and how they can hide things. I really don't know. But I do know, so in other words, maybe the accounting's there. Maybe it's hidden in some public record. You can go look it up. I haven't bothered to do it, But if it's there, I'm sure it's not going to say, okay, here are the drug tests you paid for, or, whatever. There's a lot of other stuff that the commission could do, with that. For example, in MMA, instead of using old traditional boxing judges, they might decide to bring in, put a $3,000 budget together for a hotel room and a flight for a couple of judges that really know what they're doing.
What a concept.
For example, there's a lot that they can spend the money on. If they wanted to be an entity, that was more powerful than in their state, then they could actually say, okay, we'll use this budget to become ambassadors, and we'll go to the events. We'll bring judges with us. We'll do stuff like that. But there's none of that. Like I said, they're going to pay for a Christmas party for the state police or some entity loosely related to the commissions in an organization chart somewhere.
One thing that I can say about it is that Nurmagomedov gets the last laugh on this, because if he holds true to it, and we'll see how that works out as well, he said he will never fight in Nevada again, ever, after that judgment came down. So in so doing, he said he said he's going to wait until the New York fight in the fall. Surely he's not going to wait that long to fight, though. But as of right now, Khabib can fight on the 6th of July if he doesn't do the public service announcement, which, by the way, is he has to somehow he has to be combined with the Nevada Police Department and the UFC to do an anti-bullying commercial. And if he can do that, which I don't know what that even looks like. It's got to look totally ridiculous. But if he can do that, then they knock 3 months off of his suspension, which puts him at the exact same time of coming back as Conor McGregor, oddly enough. Now, here's the thing. If Conor McGregor has already tentatively signed on the line with Cowboy Cerrone, then Conor can easily say, well, yeah, I could have done that, but they didn't have that worked out in time, so I'm fighting Cerrone. So that gets Conor out of fighting Khabib right away, which we obviously know they don't want Conor to fight Khabib right away, right? I mean, Devin and I talked about this in another podcast, and that would be a big
number 8 fighters coming.
Yeah, so this is a really good excuse for the UFC to say, even though he's available, oh, well, we've got Cerrone we signed because we didn't know, etc., right? On top of that, Khabib's saying, I'm never fighting in Nevada again. Screw them. They screwed me over. They took too much of my money. I'm not doing it. It's as much their fault as it was mine. So, there are a lot of different moving parts here that play into that, right? So we decided that, and I'm kind of interested in what your chime is on this, and I know this isn't the point of the show, so we'll go real fast on it, and then we'll get to Jones. But just real fast, what do you think about this? I believe that the next fight is going to be Conor is going to fight Cowboy, and I believe Khabib is going to fight Ferguson. What do you think?
Here's what you have to look out for as a fan, and this is the bottom line. Something's going to happen here with the UFC and Khabib that I don't know if healing is the right word, but there's something it hasn't been done yet. The Khabib's disrespected and Khabib not happy. The UFC hasn't gone and fixed that yet. Not in my book. They just cut his training partner that was part of all this stuff in the altercation, as we talked about. And, Khabib, that said, oh, my training partners, they don't want to cut them, you cut me, So he's made bold statements like that before. We'll see how many of them he backs up. I believe he's capable of backing them up because his culture is different than ours. And I think that now you're talking about hitting on his pride as a man, pride of his culture and stuff like that. And that makes you stick to your fucking gun sometimes. You know what I mean? He's already got $1.5 million. He could probably do better on $1.5 million where he's from, living in Nevada. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Could he walk away with pride? It'd be a shame because he's 30 and he didn't fight for 2 years because of an ego thing. He might regret it later. But I think he's very susceptible to that. I think there needs to be some healing here, and I want to see how that goes. Maybe it's a big contract. Maybe it is appeasing him. But if he's going to fight in July is traditionally a Nevada show. So maybe they get over that and say, look, here's $5 million more. I don't know. Khabib will have to listen at that point, right? But But there's something that has to happen here with Khabib for everything to work out. You don't want to take your dominant champion and have him carrying a lot of baggage heading into his next fight, because if that happens and he loses, then, you know, everybody loses, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, if he loses because it's his time in Ferguson, but you don't want you to, why leave the questions? You go fix things with your champion and make sure he knows that he's the guy, not McGregor, and blah, 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 whatever it takes. You need to make him happy to get him back in the fold, and so you can count on having him in Ferguson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think him and Ferguson, and again, Ferguson, throughout all this, Ferguson's now sitting a year.
Yeah, I mean, Ferguson's been on the shelf. He's been ignored. He's been placated. He's been patronized, and ultimately, he's just been, hey, sorry, Tony, about your luck, but we've got bigger money in store. You know, I don't know if they're paying him some kind of a salary to stay quiet and do nothing, but that's not really the UFC style, as far as I know, unless they've, you know, they may have changed things. I don't know about that, but anyway. So there's a lot going on there. Check out our other podcast on that to learn more about that. We went through the deep intricacies of the rest of it. But there you go as far as the boxing commission or the athletic commission is concerned.
Well,
and
John Jones.
And so let's move on to John Jones and figure out what's going on with that. Okay, Miguel. John Jones drops hot again, and it seems to be fine. John Jones has got to take urine tests for a year. Whip-de-doo, every fighter has to take urine tests for a year. If they're fighting, they have to take USADA tests whenever USADA shows up, if they're active fighters. So it's not like that's any different. And Jones acts like this is a punishment that he has to go through. Meanwhile, Nevada has licensed him again. He's getting ready to fight there in March. It's going to be a big fight. What's the deal? How come Jones gets the pass? No one else does. Tell me what's going on with that. What is your analysis of this?
You know, again, we started off the podcast, and these guys they struggle to look good, right? They struggle to look good. Here's a situation where literally you can ask the question, you know, as an uneducated fan, just superficially viewing what's going on and stuff, you got to ask, is John Jones really bigger than the UFC? Is John Jones bigger than boxing commissions? Is he bigger than the rules? What's the deal with all this, you know, 3 failed drug tests, 2 failed drug tests, and he's back, and, you know, some opponents don't want to fight him anymore, but he's still the #1 guy. He doesn't seem like a nice guy. You know, you're getting a lot of mixed messages there.
A lot.
Here comes the conspiracy. Here comes the conspiracy.
All right, here we go. Warm us up, Miguel. Give us the Miguel Iterati conspiracy. I love these.
I mean, the bottom line is it is money, and money talks. The UFC has been based in Nevada for 10 to 15 years, and that means something. And that means, you know, and I'm not talking about anything that anybody deliberately set out to do or anything like that, but it means a comfort level of the Nevada State Boxing Commission knows that the UFC is on the calendar in Nevada for 15 dates. That's 15 dates of incoming money for licensing, for promoting, for, you know, as well as all the other bells and whistles that are there. And then when there's pay-per-view involved, there's always extra little checks and things like that. And things. So you chart out 15 years worth of stuff, and now you've got a relationship. Whether you like it or not, the Nevada State Commission knows that the UFC, if the UFC is doing well, like they did in, you know, X year and X year and X year, they've got shows, and then, you know, we had the, you know, McGregor and Nick Diaz fight was huge, and Ronda Rousey was huge, and you know, and they're banking money on those days, you know.
And it's they like, just signed with ESPN Plus, which is bigger than they even thought possible. That first show was enormous.
So there's money coming in. Nevada loves to be the host. And maybe the right thing to do of the biggest fights in the world is not host them, right? You know, if they're guys like John Jones who are criminals involved. And I'm just saying criminals according to the laws they set. Why have laws and rules if you're not going to enforce them?
Okay.
So he fails all the drug tests. They find a way to make it happen, give him an exception and analyze and things like that. And at the end of the day, they know that he means 2 or 3 shows more a year, overall, more money coming in, and it trickles down to them. And it does trickle down to the Nevada Commission.
Miguel.
There's no,
is it possible?
Here's the other part is
it possible that right now, in this space and time, in the entertainment industry and the sports world, because there are so many avenues that they can go with streaming and the way technology is blowing up right now, that Vegas might be a little bit afraid that the UFC is bigger than Vegas, because when Nevada said, we're not giving Jones a license, they went to California, and California said, we'll give him a license. Is it possible that they said, holy shit, we've got competition all of a sudden? Is that it?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. And I think it goes beyond that because, this is just extrapolation on my part. No inside knowledge for sure, but there's a logic to it. Now, keep in mind, for example, I think it's Amazon or someone like that who says, hey, we're going to set up a headquarters in a new city. And cities bid for it. They change laws and taxes and things trying to lure them in. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying the UFC's Amazon. But I am saying that the Fertittas were the Vegas entity there. They're no longer there. There's an outside company. Were they Vegas too? I don't know about that. They seem to be more media, California-based. They already ran in California, got a favor done. Why? Was that because they're based out of California now? I don't know. But what I do know is the Fertittas are the Vegas people. They're not there anymore. Dana's an East Coast person. I mean, obviously now he's a monster in Vegas, and he deserves everything he has there as far as power and money and stuff like that. But he's not the casino owner, you know what I mean? So he owns the UFC, and what if the bosses say, hey, let's move this puppy to Los Angeles? And that would really hurt the Nevada Commission in the long run. Less shows there. They're involved in a lot of aspects of it where they can, and then we're having the fighters there makes them easier to monitor. There's just a lot that goes into it. And at the end of the day, the money spreads out and they look at each other. So the UFC's got 15 years worth of business there. Everybody's got numbers, right? So, they know the UFC hasn't made John Jones money since John Jones.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's face it. There's only one reason to go to Nevada. I mean, unless you love to walk around and bask in 127 degrees dry heat and you like sand. I mean, other than that, there's only one reason to go there, and that's to gamble while you're watching sports, right? Or some type of entertainment, something kind of over-the-top entertainment, because they don't have football there. They don't have, basketball. And they have fights. That's what Vegas is. They're over-the-top kind of stuff, and they're gambling. And so what they don't have is they don't have Hollywood. They don't have, everything that Hollywood can roll out. They don't have beauty. They don't have beaches. They don't have any of that stuff. And if California can offer that, there's a lot more reasons for people to jump a flight and fly to California and watch a John Jones fight there than to go to Vegas and watch that fight. And so maybe the UFC kind of said, don't fuck with us. Is that possible? Do you think that's what happened?
I think we're talking about like secret knowledge. We're talking about knowledge that everybody knows in the room, but they don't talk about it. That's kind of my feeling on it. Yeah. Like they all kind of know, but if the UFC were to actually have to go to Nevada and say, look, we're considering moving this puppy to Vancouver or some receptive city, then there would be an oh shit type of process. And it would be, it would be something that there is accounting that would be involved because the UFC does mean money to the commission. You know, certain boxing promotions have that kind of power. It's combined with the casinos too. You know, the MGM Grand and you know, the Bellagio that's hosted UFCs and stuff like that. Usually appearance fees and things. You know, there's a lot of deals and a lot of ways to monetize in Vegas where you know, Vegas does offer that, but we're also seeing, like in the case of HBO sunsetting their boxing and fighting and moving to other platforms like DAZN and ESPN Plus and things like that. It's happening now. Old models are breaking. So, yeah, I think Vegas needs to be very, very leery.
Jones is fighting Anthony Smith in this upcoming fight. You know, Smith has been on a tirade, and he's been tearing it up. I don't know that he's the best fight for Jones. Maybe he's the only fight for Jones right now. You know, I guess we'll see what happens. He's got a big punch, and he's a big, strong, tough guy. You know, I don't know, but it's a fight, right? It keeps him busy.
Yeah, is it for the belt?
Yeah, it's still for the belt. So
there you go. That's the whole thing. You know, Cormier. Where's Cormier in the light heavyweight picture? He gave the belt up. This is an interim title.
I guess I don't. I hadn't looked that far into it.
Little details that I understand. I don't mean to catch you, but the bottom line is Jones is right back in the title picture here. The UFC is marching forward with this guy, even though they did have to go before the high school principal and sit there and kind of go through like, oh, get punished again. But they walked out and got exactly what they wanted, which is the guy can fight. And That's it.
Right.
That's really all that's important. And John Jones, I guess he's going to be his own worst enemy. You know what I mean? And I guess there are people like that, you know. But I just don't see a lot of smart decisions coming out of his camp, you know. Even from the arrogance approach, you know. You could be a better liar even, you know what I mean? But,
you know, he's not even...
Because it's not even good.
You know, on film...
he's not casting himself like he's a great villain. It's not like he's a great villain even, you know?
Yeah, I mean, on film, Jones just kind of comes across as... you know, hey, I love you too. Oh, I love you. And it all looks fake to me. There's nothing about that guy. Everything is disingenuous, I guess, is what I'm trying to say about him. And so when he tries to tell me, I never took steroids, it was an accident, I took an erection boner pill, whatever it was, and it had something in it, and it, what? Come on, man. It's just BS. But here's the thing. If you know anything about science and you know about the measurements of science, in 7th grade, at the latest in science, you learn about half-life, right? And so half-life works like this. If you take a step, the biggest step you can towards the door, and then you cut that in half, and you cut that in half, and you cut that in half, you'll never reach the door. That's called a half-life, right? Well, half-life never goes up. Half-life always goes down. That's why it's called a half-life. Now, how can Jones have more in his system today than he did yesterday? It just doesn't make sense unless he's taking the stuff and he's taking something to wash. Keep in mind that Tirabolin, or whatever the hell it's called, it's a 24-hour steroid, more or less. It's fast-acting. It's in and out of the system in 24 hours, and it's an immediate-acting steroid, so that you get the effects almost like you put it in, and almost immediately you get the effects. You don't have to wait, 3 or 4 days for it to kick in. It's not an oil-based, it's not ether-based, an ether-based, but it immediately kicks in and gets into your bloodstream and gets you rolling. So having said that, it also immediately washes out, right? It just doesn't make sense that it would still be in there, let alone that there would be more of it a day later or a year later. It's just ridiculous that they can do this. But they're letting John Jones get away with it, and they wouldn't let somebody else get away with it. And to me, that is the travesty. Because as far as I'm concerned, all steroids should be legal. They should be able to do whatever they need to do. What's going to happen when CRISPR comes along and athletes start going in and saying, I want to change my genetics so that I can be faster, I can jump higher, I can run faster, I can punch harder, I can whatever, I can think faster, I can see further, I can do. What happens then? Is that an alteration that they're not going to allow them to do? I mean, we haven't even started talking about gene editing yet. So what happens when that's part of it? What about stem cell? Are stem cells part of it? Because there's absolutely no doubt that when fighters take stem cells, that they are most certainly getting a boost in their performance. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So why are we letting all this other stuff go through? But when it comes to steroids, for some reason, it's this line we don't cross. It's ridiculous. And blood doping, we don't let blood doping happen. So there are just so many different lines that they're trying to draw. They're never going to be able to ramble it all in. I just don't get it. And I don't understand why someone who's trying to make their living on this has to fight these silly things that can modify them to allow, A, give them a better chance to recover, and B, give the fans a better athlete to see so that we get the best of the best. And it wraps up like this. I heard this said on a show, on a podcast. I don't remember which podcast it was the other day, but somebody said, would you rather, if you could go back and watch Pride, would you rather go back and watch Pride with USADA or without it? What's your answer to that?
Yeah, I'll take it without.
There you go. Yeah, nobody wants USADA. Just get rid of USADA. Go back to the days when these guys could go out there juiced to the gills and fight, and they could recover, and you got the supreme fighter that they can actually be. I don't understand the controversy. I don't believe it's cheating. It's just allowing them to recover and be the best they can be. I don't get it. I don't get it. What are your thoughts on that, Miguel?
I mean, I think Rosie Sexton, the British female MMA fighter, had the most logical take on it. It would make sense because she's a real smart and noted person in the sport, you know, as far as fighting and as far as her brain. So, I mean, the bottom line is why have rules if you're not going to enforce them? You know what I mean?
Okay.
So, I mean, we do have these rules today, and very visibly in front of us, enforcing them or policing them in any way, shape, or form is really kind of like getting up and watching, you know, Saturday morning cartoons. You know, it's like kind of like watching that, you know, he's just a bill and he's sitting up on top of Capitol Hill with a lot of other videos. Remember that old commercial? It's literally like watching that, completely worthless. But that's what we're watching. We're watching something that is the Nevada State Commission knows that they did what they did, issued their edicts yesterday with suspensions and money, and they pulled 500 G's down. And now they know they got to impress somebody who's on a chair or a board or a lieutenant governor, or somebody's got to be impressed with what they did for the year. Well, they pulled back money. They've got 3 suspensions of high-level athletes. They're on it. They are on it. So they do what they did yesterday, and they hold their breath to make sure that there really isn't an explosion that guy notices, that what they did ain't worth shit. So that's all they're looking for, is to be able to say, go back, make a presentation, and say, look, we're taking action, we're doing our jobs. But it doesn't really solve any of the problems. There's people out there that are actively looking for ways around the system, and, you know, cheating's as old as the hills. So it's something that, you know, what you're asking for it to be a kind of a free-for-all, I think is a legitimate point. I think a lot of the money spent on, you know, trying to police it, you know, fly guys to collect piss in Brazil and stuff like that, you know, that money could be used for doctors and stuff. What we're talking about here is a clash of doctors that they're unwilling to do the fight that they actually should do with research and in labs and things. And that's because you got some doctors that say steroids are bad, and some other doctors that say, you know, we'll get you what you need.
there we go. Look, I think we've kind of ridden this pony into the dark, and I don't know what else we can say about it. Nevada's going to be what Nevada's going to be. Atlantic City's going to be what Atlantic City's going to be. They're these entities that, they grew up enforcing fight sport for generations now, right? And they're there for some reason. I get it. I understand their value, but sometimes their value is I don't know if sometimes they overstep their value, and sometimes they just don't know what the hell their value even is. I guess is the bottom line on it, as far as I'm concerned. Miguel, you got anything you want to add to this before we wrap this one up? I'm just kind of befuddled by the whole thing, and I don't know what else to do with it. I don't know. I don't understand why John Jones gets a free pass and everybody else has to set the bench if they pee hot. It just bothers me.
Because policing it is such a problem. We're just playing along with what's policing there. You're just kind of watching like, yeah, that's good, we're doing it. And that's what it is. Nobody's solving the problem. The commission, like I said, they're happy to just play along and make sure nobody, creates waves and decides to change the system for real, because then, they would be in trouble. And that's all they're interested in is self-preservation, not improving the sport or anything like that. So, yeah, we strayed off topic, but John Jones will do that to you. We'll see. John Jones with Anthony Smith. Oh, in terms of Anthony Smith, I think his name says it all. I don't think he's got a generic name. He's a bald fighter, a bald white guy kind of thing. There's a very generic look to him. He hasn't transcended yet. He really hasn't transcended yet to be like, Anthony Smith, like him. And it doesn't matter that he's got a common name or whatever. When people say Anthony Smith, you think of him. He hasn't gotten there yet. John Jones did with the John Jones name, which is basically the same thing. But now literally, you got a marquee. It's John Jones versus Anthony Smith, and it kind of all sounds plain and vanilla, right?
Yeah. So I mean, look, if Smith goes out there and gets the haymaker, gets the lucky one, and Jones winds up on his back, counting sheep, Smith becomes the new go-to guy for 10 seconds, and he becomes Gustafsson, right? And they go, wow, Gustafsson, kicked the shit out of Jones, and then there's got to be the rematch and all that stuff. But I don't know where to go with Jones, and I personally don't care about Jones. I just wish he'd get the hell out of the sport. I get sick of dealing with him. I get sick of talking about him. I think there are more important people in the sport. Whether he's the GOAT or not, I think there's a lot of arguments to be made about that. I think there are a lot of people who can come in there. For instance, there's this guy named Demetrius Johnson who's pretty fabulous. If he wasn't 125 pounds and 5 foot tall, a lot of people would be paying attention to him right now. Anyway, hey, we appreciate you guys stopping by. If we did it wrong, tell us. If we did it right, tell somebody else. Smash that subscribe button right beneath you, if you will. We appreciate that. Hit the like button. Tell us you like us. If you don't like us, tell us that too. I guess if you don't like us, hit the dislike button so we know something. Miguel, anything you got before we wrap this one up and go on our ways for the day?
Nope, had a lot of fun, and as always, guys, always good to talk MMA and the Nevada Commission.
Always good to talk MMA, I'll put it that way. Hey, thanks a lot. Until the next time, we'll see you all soon. Namaste.